There is a machine working on American highways right now that does something most people would swear is impossible. It doesn't lift rockets or dig through mountains with buckets the size of cars. It does something quieter, stranger, and in some ways harder to believe than any of that. This machine pours solid concrete road barriers out of thin air. Wet concrete goes in one end, and out the back comes a finished, shaped, hardened wall of road, perfectly straight, with no molds, no seams, and no crew laying anything by hand. It moves forward on tracks, guided by lasers, and behind it a highway appears as if someone hit a print button on the road itself. The biggest bulldozer you have ever seen would look like a toy next to some of the machines this one shares a category with. But this particular machine earned the top spot for a reason that has nothing to do with size. If you are enjoying videos like this, please hit the like button because it takes a lot of effort to make these, and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. What you are about to see is a real machine doing real work on American roads right now. And the way it works is so simple and so strange that once you understand it, you will never look at a highway the same way again. But to understand why this machine leaves people speechless, you first need to understand what it is, what it does, and why it beats every giant on the list. A machine that prints roads. The machine is called the Wirtgen SP 500, and it is a slipform paver. That name might not sound exciting, but what it does is one of the most quietly unbelievable things you will ever see a machine do. Picture a large boxy machine crawling forward on metal tracks at a slow walking speed. On the front, a hopper receives a steady stream of wet concrete poured in from a truck driving alongside it. That concrete flows through the inside of the machine, gets compressed and shaped, and comes out the back as a fully formed highway barrier or curb, already holding its shape, already hardening, already looking like a finished wall. No one is behind it with trowels. No one is setting up wooden forms or metal molds. The machine just keeps moving, and the road keeps appearing behind it, smooth and perfect, stretching out for thousands of feet in a single day. It is like watching someone squeeze a ribbon of toothpaste onto a countertop, except the toothpaste instantly turns to stone the moment it touches the ground. The SP 500 can produce barriers, curbs, drainage channels, and even full concrete pavements, all in one continuous motion. It does not stop to reset. It does not need a crew to finish the surface by hand. The concrete comes out shaped, compacted, and smooth, as if the road was always there and the machine is simply uncovering it. But here is where it gets even stranger. This machine is not the biggest, the heaviest, or the most powerful thing on any list of American heavy equipment. It does not carry rockets or lift stadium roofs. It earned its top spot for a completely different reason, and to understand why, you need to look at how it actually turns wet concrete into a finished road without any molds at all. Imagine driving on a highway and seeing this machine up ahead, a square metal box inching along while a perfect concrete wall pours out behind it like a liquid fountain solidifying in real time. The trucks feed it constantly, one after another, lining up like cars at a toll booth. The SP 500 drinks their load without pausing. Every drop of concrete becomes part of the road. It is a factory that moves, a production line with no roof and no walls, operating in the open air under sun, rain, or wind. Workers walk alongside it, but they are not building. They are watching, checking, making sure the flow stays steady. The machine is doing the building by itself. It is a strange sight, almost eerie, because there is no banging, no hammering, no shouts from a crew, just the low hum of the engine and the soft rumble of wet concrete being shaped into stone. But to understand why this strange, quiet machine earns the #1 spot, you have to understand how slipform paving actually works. How wet concrete becomes a wall without a mold. The secret behind the Wirtgen SP 500 is something called slipform paving, and it works on a principle that sounds almost like magic, but is really just brilliant engineering. When you pour concrete into a wooden frame or a metal mold, the frame holds the concrete in place until it hardens. That is how roads and barriers were built for decades. You build the mold, you pour the concrete, you wait, you remove the mold, and you move on to the next section. It is slow, labor-intensive, and full of seams, where one section meets the next. Slipform paving throws all of that away. Instead of using an outside mold, the machine itself is the mold. Inside the SP 500, the wet concrete is forced into a shaped chamber that gives it the exact profile of the barrier or curb you want. The machine compacts the concrete using vibration, shaking out all the air bubbles and packing the material so tightly that it holds its shape the moment it exits the back of the machine. Think of it like an ice cream machine. You pour in liquid mix and the machine churns and freezes it until a solid shape comes out the other end. The SP 500 does the same thing, but instead of ice cream, it is concrete, and instead of a cone, it is a highway barrier. The vibration is the key. Without it, the concrete would slump and collapse the second it left the machine. The internal vibrators run at thousands of vibrations per minute, settling every particle of sand and stone into its tightest possible position. By the time the concrete exits the shaping chamber, it is dense enough and stiff enough to stand on its own. It is still technically wet, still chemically hardening, but physically it holds its shape like a solid object. That is why there are no molds. The machine replaces the mold, and the concrete replaces itself as its own support structure. But the concrete mix itself has to be just right, and that is a whole science that most people never think about. Think about a brick wall. Every brick is placed by hand, mortared, aligned, checked. A slipform paver replaces every brick, every trowel, every mortar line with one continuous squeeze of wet concrete. The shape inside the machine, called the profile, can be changed. If you need a barrier shaped like a wall, the machine molds it. If you need a curb with a rounded edge, the machine molds it. The machine is a shapeshifter, and the mold is never left behind. It travels with the machine, hidden inside, vibrating and compressing the concrete until it can stand on its own. The machine does not wait for the concrete to harden. It trusts the vibration and the mixed design. The concrete hardens behind the machine, in the open air, as the machine crawls forward. That means the road is being built in real time, behind a moving box, with no mold and no waiting. It is a rolling factory, and the factory never stops. But none of this works if the concrete itself is not perfect, and that is where the real science begins. The concrete mix that makes it possible. You cannot pour just any concrete into a slipform paver and expect it to work. The mix has to be engineered with incredible precision, and getting it right is one of the reasons this machine is so impressive. The concrete used in slipform paving is called low-slump concrete. Slump is a measure of how much a pile of wet concrete sags or flattens out when you put it on the ground. Regular concrete for a sidewalk has a high slump. It is wet and runny, so you can pour it into molds and let it settle. Low-slump concrete is different. It is thick, almost like dry mud or stiff clay. When you scoop it up, it holds its shape. That is exactly what slipform paving needs. If the concrete were too wet, it would pour out of the back of the machine like soup and collapse into a puddle. If it were too dry, it would not compact properly and would leave gaps and air pockets inside the barrier. The mix has to hit a very narrow window where it is wet enough to flow through the machine, but stiff enough to stand up the instant it exits. The ingredients themselves are carefully chosen. The sand has to be a specific grade, the gravel has to be a specific size, and the cement has to be measured to the pound. Chemical additives called admixtures are mixed in to control how fast the concrete hardens, how it behaves under vibration, and how it resists cracking over the next 30 years. Some of these mixes are designed to reach full strength in hours instead of weeks, so a highway barrier poured in the morning can be hit by traffic by the afternoon. Every batch is tested before it goes into the machine, because if one truck delivers concrete that is too wet or too dry, the entire stretch of barrier behind the machine could fail. The machine operator watches the concrete like a baker watching dough, adjusting the speed and vibration to match what is coming in. It is a constant dance between the mix, the machine, and the weather, and when all three line up perfectly, the result is a road that appears out of nowhere. Think about baking a cake. If the batter is too runny, the cake collapses. If it is too thick, it turns dry and crumbly. The baker has to measure flour, sugar, eggs, and liquid to the gram. Slipform concrete is the same. The engineers who design the mix are like chefs in a laboratory. They test the sand to make sure it is clean. They test the gravel to make sure the rocks are round and not jagged. They test the cement to make sure it reacts the right way with water. They add chemical admixtures the way a baker adds yeast. Some admixtures make the concrete flow better under vibration. Others slow down the hardening so the machine has time to shape it. Others speed up the strength gain so the road opens faster. Every batch is tested at the plant and tested again at the machine. A technician drops a sample into a cone, flips the cone, and watches how far the concrete spreads. If it spreads too far, the batch is too wet. If it barely moves, it is too dry. The target is a concrete that holds its shape like a sandcastle, firm but not hard, wet but not liquid. It is one of the most precisely engineered materials in the construction world, and it is being produced by the truckload every single day. Without this exact mix, the SP500 would be useless. But even with the perfect concrete, the machine still has to steer itself perfectly straight, and that is where the technology inside gets even more impressive. Lasers and sensors that never blink. Building a road barrier that stretches for miles would be useless if it wandered back and forth across the highway like a snake. The barrier has to be dead straight, or at least follow the exact curve of the road, with tolerances measured in fractions of an inch. A human driver cannot hold that kind of precision for 12 hours straight. No one can. That is why the Wirtgen SP500 does not rely on a human to steer the finished product. It uses a combination of laser guidance, stringline sensors, and 3D positioning systems that monitor every movement in real time. The most common setup uses a stringline, which is exactly what it sounds like. A taut wire or cable is stretched alongside the planned path of the barrier, held up by stakes every 50 feet or so. The machine has a sensor arm that rides against this stringline, and if the machine drifts even a tiny bit to the left or right, the sensor detects the change instantly and corrects the steering automatically. The operator does not touch the steering wheel for the barrier line. The machine follows the string like a train follows a track. Newer versions go even further. They use laser receivers mounted on poles that pick up signals from a rotating laser on a tripod, creating an invisible flat plane above the work area. The machine measures its height against that plane and adjusts itself up or down to keep the barrier at the exact height needed. Some setups use GPS satellites and 3D models loaded into the machine computer, so the entire road is planned digitally, and the machine follows the plan with millimeter accuracy. The operator monitors everything on screens inside the cab, watching the concrete level, the vibration frequency, the steering path, and the machine speed all at once. If anything drifts out of range, alarms sound and the operator makes adjustments. The result is a barrier that looks like it was built by a machine in a factory and then placed on the road. Except it was never in a factory. It was born right there on the highway, one continuous piece, with no seams and no breaks for as far as the machine traveled that day. But to really appreciate why this machine earned the top spot over every giant on the list, you need to see how it compares to the monsters people usually think of when they hear the words heavy machinery. Think about a highway barrier that curves gently to the left for 2 miles, then straightens, then curves right. A human driver would drift, overcorrect, and drift again. The barrier would wobble. But the SP500 follows a digital plan that knows every curve down to the millimeter. The sensors update hundreds of times per second. The machine adjusts its steering hydraulics constantly, so gently that you cannot see it happen. The barrier comes out smooth, flowing, and perfect, as if the road was drawn by a ruler. Even the height is controlled automatically. If the ground dips 2 inches, the machine raises itself 2 inches so the barrier stays level. If the ground rises, the machine lowers itself. The sensors see the ground before the machine gets there, reading the surface and adjusting in real time. It is like a machine with eyes, watching the road ahead and reacting before the concrete even arrives. The operator still plays a role. They watch the concrete supply, keep the trucks moving, and make sure nothing jams. But the steering, the height, the vibration, and the speed are all managed by the machine computer. The human is there to make sure nothing goes wrong. The machine is there to make sure everything goes right. But to really understand why this strange, quiet machine earns the top spot on a list of American heavy equipment giants, you need to see how it compares to the monsters people usually think of when they hear the words heavy machinery. Why the quietest machine beats the loudest. When people think of American heavy machines, they think of things that shake the ground. The NASA Crawler Transporter 2 weighs 6.65 million pounds and carries rockets to launch pads on 8 tank tracks, each track shoe heavier than a small car. The Caterpillar 6090 FS mining shovel weighs as much as 160 elephants and scoops up a school bus worth of rock in a single bite. The Caterpillar 797F mining truck carries 400 tons on tires that cost $50,000 each. The Komatsu D575A bulldozer has a blade wide enough to shove a 2-car garage out of the way. These are the machines that make people stop and stare. They are enormous, loud, and powerful in ways that seem almost absurd. The Wirtgen SP500 is none of those things. It is not the heaviest machine. It is not the fastest. It does not have the biggest engine or the largest tires. It does not dig or haul or lift. But it does something those machines cannot do. It creates finished infrastructure in one continuous pass, with no molds, no manual finishing, and no seams. The NASA crawler carries a rocket, but the rocket is already built. The mining shovel digs rock, but the rock still has to be hauled away by something else. The bulldozer pushes dirt, but the dirt still has to be dealt with. The SP500 takes raw, wet concrete and turns it directly into a finished, permanent road structure in real time. There is no second step. There is no waiting for a crew to come behind and finish the job. The road comes out done. That is why it leaves people speechless. It is not about size. It is about watching something solid appear out of what looks like nothing, flowing out of a machine like a river turning to stone, straight as a laser, smooth as a factory product, stretching for miles behind a machine that looks too simple to be doing what it is doing. The giants on the list are impressive because of how much they can carry or push or dig. The SP500 is impressive because of what it creates from nothing, right in front of your eyes, without stopping. In a world where we measure machines by tons and horsepower, this one proves that the most jaw-dropping thing a machine can do is build something perfect, continuously, out of wet mud and air. Think about what a highway barrier really is. It is a wall that cars crash into at 70 miles per hour. It has to hold up under impact, weather, sun, rain, ice, and salt for decades. It has to be smooth enough not to damage a tire if a car scrapes it, but strong enough to stop a swerving truck. The SP500 builds that wall, mile after mile, with no seams where one piece ends and the next begins. Every seam in a concrete barrier is a weak point, a place where water can freeze and crack the wall over years. The SP500 removes every seam. The barrier is one continuous piece of stone, poured and shaped in a single pass, from the first mile to the last. That is not just efficient. That is a better road, built by a machine that looks too simple to be doing what it is doing. The giants are impressive because of what they move. The SP500 is impressive because of what it makes, and what it makes lasts for 50 years. It is the quiet one, the strange one, the one that does not roar or shake the ground. But when you see a highway barrier stretching into the distance, perfect and unbroken, you are looking at the work of a machine that prints roads. And that is why it earns the #1 spot. If you enjoyed this and want to see more like it, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. There are related videos on the screen right now if you want to keep watching. So here is a question for you. If you could watch any of these machines work in person for a day, which one would you choose and why? Let me know in the comments.